Sam Darnold and the Seahawks offense took a Sunday off for the most part, but thankfully the defense showed up to score the points as the Seahawks picked up their 9th win at Lumen Field. What went down in Week 13? How did the Seahawks get it done? Going to be breaking it all down here on a day after post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings to all. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're tuning in from Forks, Washington, or across the country in Portland, Maine. Thanks for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. The Seahawks improving to 9-3 on Sunday with a commanding 26-0 win over the undermanned Minnesota Vikings at Lumen Field. Seattle moves into a 3-way tie atop the NFC standings with the Rams, who lost to the Carolina Panthers. So the Seahawks getting a post-Thanksgiving gift from Carolina to help them pull even in the standings. And the Chicago Bears at 9-3. 3 9-3 squads atop the NFC. The Seahawks are one of them. And it's interesting how this game played out, because coming in, Minnesota has been struggling so much on offense, and that did not change in this game. That really was what propelled the Seahawks to their 9th win. Seattle didn't have an offensive touchdown until the fourth quarter. They had a bunch of field goals, but Sam Darnold was under duress to get sacked 4 times in the first half alone. That was almost a quarter, or almost a third, of what Sam Darnold had been sacked in the entire season leading up to Sunday's game. So the offensive line had issues. Brian Flores was bringing his blitz packages like he has always excelled at doing, mixing and matching 4-man rushes, disguising who's coming, who's not. And the Seahawks had a hard time picking that up, especially in the first half. And that led to a bunch of field goals. And the defense coming through with the biggest points to really shift the game. The Vikings, with an undrafted rookie quarterback in Max Brosmer under center, taking advantage of a Sam Darnold fumble on a strip sack. They had the football at the 13-yard line. They needed to go 13 yards to get a score. They're down 3-0 in the second quarter. 4 plays later, 4th and 1. This is really the play that completely changed the tone of the game, because at that point, Minnesota was playing that low-scoring, sloppy game they needed to play to have a chance to win. And Brosmer, being the rookie that he is, getting flushed out of the pocket by Demarcus Lawrence, and instead of just taking the sack and accepting that the Vikings weren't going to get any points there, he decides to throw the football, and he was trying to throw it away, and it turns out Ernest Jones was his intended receiver, and Ernest Jones takes it back to the house, 85 yards for a touchdown. That could have been a 10 or 14-point swing in this game. Seattle up 10-0 after that, didn't look back, and this is a game where 10 points with the way the Vikings played offensively. This was a game where it just felt like 10 points was 40 points on the scoreboard, and the Seahawks just continued to harass Brosmer all day long. And to the rookie's credit, he didn't have much help. The Vikings weren't running the football. Seattle shut down Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason out of the backfield, and Brosmer was under duress from the early outset of this game. His receivers were dropping passes as well, and that pressure started to turn into airmailed throws that ultimately turned into 4 interceptions. Jones had his pick 6. He added another interception in the second half. Reek Woolen, Kobe Bryant also with picks. Demarcus Lawrence forcing a fumble that Tyakata recovered. So you get 5 turnovers. There's a really good chance that you are going to win that football game. And so Seattle shuts down an offense that just could not get out of their own way. And the Seahawks, of course, played a big part in that with that relentless pressure. But I want to go back again to Ernest Jones, because that's kind of been the storyline coming out of this game, as it should be. And Jones was a little banged up at the end of the game, but he spoke with reporters, so it seems like he's doing fine. Has been battling a knee injury for the better part of a month. but he had that pick six, led the team with 12 tackles in this game. And after the game, he gave a stirring speech to his teammates. And this is a guy that's been through a lot. His father passed away during training camp. He spent a decent amount of time away from the team. He had surgery on his knee in the offseason. He has gone through a lot. And Mike Macdonald dove into that after the game on the player that looked to be the MVP of this contest for the Seahawks, considering he was the first one to score a touchdown and it wasn't the Seahawks on offense. Take a listen to what Mike Macdonald had to say afterwards.
It's a great message to the team in the locker room. Hopefully they got video of it, but the guy's been through a lot, and it's something, people, it's just the position we're put in as coaches, and like that's really the reason you have a team, is that you can be there for your brother when they need you. And I know we're in business, there's transactions and stuff, but at the end of the day, I mean, these are relationships you're going to have for a long time, hopefully. And it's really great to see that the rest of the guys there to support him, and he's playing great football. He's playing great football. He's battled through some health things throughout the year as well. I mean, and some of the plays he's making in the run game too is just really tremendous. I mean, really great plays that allows us to really call some defenses that you normally wouldn't call in those situations.
With the pick six specifically, obviously it's a 14-point swing, so that matters a lot. But just what's the intangible in terms of how much that matters to the sideline?
Well, yeah. Well, that was huge just coming off the takeaway as well, I think. Was that coming off the fumble?
Yeah.
So just a huge, turning point in the game. But again, if you make these situations bigger than they are, it's just, hey, let's look at this. The next play, defense, we're up. It's rock and roll, 4th and 1. Josh Jobe deserves a lot of credit. He defended by the grass, so he made the tackle to create the 4th and 1. That might have forced him in a pass situation rather than running it. I mean, all that stuff adds up, and that was a huge part of the turning point in the game.
Speaking of Joe.
Yeah, this was really a huge turning point in this game because, again, Minnesota was playing this out the way that they had to win this game. They couldn't expect to come in and put up a bunch of points with an undrafted rookie quarterback making his first NFL start. And at that point, if Minnesota even could have got a field goal and is tied at 3 with not much time left before halftime, the Vikings are feeling pretty darn good about where they're at. And that was as deflating of a mistake as they could have possibly made there. And Ernest Jones capitalizing on it, and just surprised, he said after the game, that the ball was actually thrown right at him, and returns it back to the house for an 85-yard touchdown and 5 turnovers. The offense was able to get some drives deep into Minnesota territory that they were able to turn into Jason Myers field goals. They got a touchdown from Zach Charbonnet to really put the nail in the coffin, if it wasn't already, in the fourth quarter. So Seattle got the plays done that they needed to, even if the offense was not great. Sam Darnold had 128 passing yards. I didn't think that Sam necessarily played poorly. He was dealing with a aggressive defense that was getting after him. They were tipping passes at the line of scrimmage, and it was just making it really difficult for Seattle to get anything going with their passing game. Jackson Smith and Jigba with just 23 receiving yards on 2 catches. So it was not a game where the passing game really was able to get going. A credit to the Vikings for what they did defensively to make that happen. But the defense for the Seahawks was so darn good yesterday. And I know it's against an undrafted rookie quarterback. You expect that they're going to dominate, but to go out and not lay that flat game that some teams will do against a backup quarterback. We saw that a lot, unfortunately, the last few years that Pete Carroll was coach, where a backup quarterback would come in and just dice up Seattle's defense. This group has way too much pride to let that happen. They were excited for this opportunity to take advantage of a untested first-time quarterback, first-time starter in the league, and gave him an absolutely rude welcome. And the Seahawks, this is just the way it's been this year. They have been just shutting teams down, regardless of who's playing at the quarterback position. The Buccaneers game being the only exception to the rule there. This defense just continues to get it done. And now they get a chance to get healthier, because it sounds like Julian Love's got a real good chance to be back this week, at least practicing this week. So Seattle is going to get more firepower back here very soon, possibly this upcoming game against the Atlanta Falcons, and be closer to full strength in a secondary that's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the course of the season. So a lot to be excited about. Obviously, the offense is going to look at this game and want to throw it out. They're going to want to come back this next week and figure out what they can do to get things going against Atlanta on the road this next weekend. But I don't think that it was the worst game we've seen. And the fact of the matter is that they were able to control the pace of the game with their run game, had over 100 rushing yards again. So they did the things they needed to do to win, even if the Vikings made things difficult in their passing game with their pass rush and their blitzing and the sim pressures, everything that they were bringing. I thought Brian Flores had a great game plan. Seattle didn't necessarily adapt as well as they could have to that, but they were able to get enough points on the board that in a game like this, you didn't need to score a ton, and they still got 26 up there with the defense chipping in with that pick six. Coming up next, game ball time here. Going to be looking at the best performers on offense, defense, and special teams for the Seahawks. Don't go away. You're listening to the day after post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, the layout makes it so simple. You can just scroll through the matchups, compare seat views, pick a game, tap a section, and you have your tickets locked in within minutes. There's no confusion, no hunting for fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go Game Time. This episode's also brought your way by Duer. I just got my new jeans from Duer, and they lived up to the hype. I had heard all these amazing things about these jeans. The stretch of the traditional denim being 5 times more, antibacterial, Cool Max technology that regulates your body temperature, wicks moisture, all these things and much more. The boxes are checked off with Duer, which combines classic jeans wear style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It is truly the best of both worlds. Duer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. Simply put, Duer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopduer.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopduer.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. Welcome back to the day after post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Normally, this would have been a couple hours after the final whistle on game day, but for those of you that follow me on social media, you may have seen I'm in the process of moving back to Seattle full time and trying to get my house on the market right now, and kind of reached a position where I needed to step aside a little bit and get some stuff done last night to make sure we got it on the market on time. So thank you for your patience. Very excited to continue diving into this 26-0 win for the Seahawks over the Vikings. Let's get to our game balls now. As I mentioned, offensively, nobody really lit it on fire yesterday for the Seahawks. The Vikings played a big part in that with suffocating pass rushes, blitzes. They were getting Seattle in a lot of third and medium, third and long situations. Offensive line wasn't protecting. So the guy that I'm going to talk about didn't necessarily have the best stat line, average under 4 yards per carry, but I thought Zach Charbonnet played really well yesterday. One of the field goal drives that the Seahawks had in the second quarter, he got him into the red zone. He had 2 runs for 13 yards where he broke a bunch of tackles. One of them, he was hit behind the line of scrimmage and turned it into, I believe it was a 7 or 8 yard run that he broke multiple tackles. I just thought he was running like a man on a mission yesterday. And he was the only player for the Seahawks on offense that found the end zone, really putting the game away if it wasn't already decided in the fourth quarter. on a 17-yard touchdown run where he was able to bounce it to the sideline, accelerated, rocketed past a couple pursuing defenders, and got into the end zone. Ken Walker III was in consideration here too. I thought both running backs did some really nice things yesterday with the offense struggling otherwise. And it was another 100-plus yard game, fourth straight game that Seattle's done that with their rushing attack. So they are definitely trending in the right direction there. And I thought Zach Charbonnet was a big part of that yesterday. He was kind of a tone setter, even if the passing game wasn't getting it done and Seattle had to settle for a bunch of field goals. Charbonnet was able to eat a lot of clock in the second half with his hard running and moving the chains, getting some third and short conversions as well. Ended up having a really good game, even if the stat line shows under 4 yards per carry. He had a lot of short yardage situations at the goal line in the red zone that impacted that, got hit in the backfield quite a bit, and still found a way to make a positive impact. As for the defensive side of the football, I mentioned this last segment. If you were having a vote, I would think that most people are going to be giving Ernest Jones the MVP of this game, and I would completely understand it because he had the 85-yard pick six. He had a second interception in the second half. He's got 5 of them now this season. He led the team in tackles. And yet I'm not picking Ernest Jones as my defensive game ball winner because, listen, that pick six is not happening without Demarcus Lawrence. And you want to talk about a guy that is playing lights out football right now. Tank is setting the law for opposing offenses, and he's playing like the sheriff out there. The guy is just dictating what the offense is not able to do, and he's doing it in a number of different ways. He was the one that flushed Max Brosmer from the pocket on Ernest Jones' pick six, and he hit the quarterback and was bringing him down, forced that ugly decision, throwing the ball, trying to throw the ball away, and ends up getting it right into the basket for Ernest Jones to return it with nobody in front of him for a touchdown. Lawrence made that happen. Next drive, he had a third down sack. More on that later, what happened afterwards, but third down sack to end a drive. And then he had another big turnover in the second half. And I think, they talked about it on the telecast. I don't normally see the telecast copy because I'm usually in the press box. Since I wasn't at the game yesterday, I did get to watch the broadcast version, and they were 110% correct. Like, if you're looking for teaching tape at any level, but particularly showing guys what it takes to be a star in the NFL, the effort that Demarcus Lawrence made on a play where he hustled and chased after Aaron Jones from behind. He was more than 10 yards behind him. He was on his back in the backfield, gets up and chases down Aaron Jones and punches the ball out of his hands, forces a fumble, and Tyakata recovers. Seattle ends up getting a field goal off that. Demarcus Lawrence was responsible. He was directly responsible for 13 of Seattle's 26 points in this game. He led to Ernest Jones' pick six, and he had a sack that led to a punt that forced down to the other side. Seattle got a field goal on that drive before the half. And he got the other field goal off of his fumble that he forced. He was a one-man wrecking crew yesterday. So as great as Ernest Jones played, and again, I can completely understand with him having the touchdown, I can understand why he would be viewed as the MVP in this game. And yet, I think you look at what Demarcus Lawrence did. If Demarcus Lawrence made that pick six happen, and he did a bunch of other things. He was all over the field. The Vikings had absolutely no answer for him. So that is my pick. And if I had to pick one game ball winner, Demarcus Lawrence is the one that is getting it, because I just think he is impacting the game in so many ways, and he's making splash plays every single week. In the last 2 home games, he's contributed to 3 defensive touchdowns. Like, the guy is playing at a borderline all-pro level right now. He has been that good, and what an addition to this already good defense that he has been on that defensive line. And on special teams, this one is really easy. Jason Myers, I know he wins these a handful of times every single year, but not just the fact that he was 4 for 4 for field goals, but he had a 56-yarder and a 54-yarder in this game. So he wasn't making chip shots. It's not like the Seahawks flamed out in the red zone several times and he was coming up and kicking 30, 35-yard field goals. He was kicking the long variety. And even though the weather was decent, it was a cooler day. sometimes the ball doesn't carry very well at Lumen Field in those situations. And yet he was booting it through the uprights on those 50-plus yard field goals. He now has 33 made field goals from 50-plus yards in his time with the Seattle Seahawks. So he is continuing to extend his franchise record in that regard. Incredibly reliable. And I'll talk later about why I pushed back against this a little bit, but it makes it easier for a coach to take a little more conservative approach when you are in control of a game, when you know you got a kicker that can consistently be reliable, making those 50-plus yarders. And Jason Myers has been everything in that this season for Seattle. He has been fantastic. So another game ball for Seattle's kicker. Coming up next, I'm going to dish out my 3 up, 3 down. Who's hot, who's not, coming out of this 26-0 shutout victory over the Vikings. Don't go away. You're listening to the day after postgame edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in the action. Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Right now, you can create a lineup in less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy scores, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the day after postgame edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in here on this Monday afternoon. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it, as I do each and every week. Again, normally it's right after the game, a few hours after the game. Had some things come up schedule-wise, but I'm not going to let our valued listeners down. We're going to get to our weekly 3 up, 3 down. Who's hot, who's not. And let's start on the positive side of things as far as who's hot. And I mentioned it, it's hard to find who's hot on offense coming out of yesterday's game with just 1 touchdown on the offensive side of the ball. But I'm going to give a shout out to Cody White. And I feel like I do this every time that Cody White gets an opportunity to get the football in his hands. He just makes things happen. You'd love to see more chances for him. That guy that is on and off the roster, is bounced on and off the practice squad, the 53, you name it. But it just seems like every time in a regular season game that Cody White's number gets called, he makes something happen. And he had a 21-yard catch on a 3rd and long yesterday, which the Vikings were absolutely dominant in those situations yesterday. Sam Darnold was getting bombarded. He was under siege quickly on most of those 3rd and medium, 3rd and long situations, took a bunch of sacks on those plays. But in this particular instance, he was able to get it out quickly to Cody White, and he created a lot of yardage after the catch, broke a couple of tackles, showed off his power along with a little bit of wiggle in space as well. It just seems like every time Cody White gets a chance to go out and do something for the Seahawks, whether it's on offense or whether it's on special teams, I wouldn't be shocked if you could put him in on defense and he'd find a way to make a positive impact. That's just the kind of player that Cody White is. Give him an opportunity, give him any role. He's going to give the absolute best he has. He's going to find a way to do something positive that's going to help your football team. So on a day where there wasn't much to be excited about on offense in general, that was really one of the few plays that jumped out. That was an exciting one. And it's just nice to see this kid continue to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to him. Defensive line-wise, it shouldn't be a surprise. You know, Leonard Williams is pretty darn good. Byron Murphy II is proving this year he's pretty darn good. But the Seattle Seahawks interior defensive line yesterday, just absolutely dominant from the outset. And Max Brosmer actually completed 4 of his first 5 passes. He should have been 5 for 5. Jordan Addison dropped a very catchable pass. It was a nice downfield skinny post and didn't bring it in. And after that, things just kind of went downhill from there for Brosmer and the Vikings. But pass protection was not there for him most of this game either. And opening drive, after Chinonwosu had a sack that was wiped out by a Josh Jobe penalty on the back end, only a few plays later, Leonard Williams picks up the slack and gets a third down sack. Byron Murphy II gets one later in this football game. The Vikings could not run the ball. When Brandon Peely was in, he was setting the tone, eating up double teams, was making some plays there. Mike Morris was getting involved. This entire interior defensive line played exceptional football yesterday. And Minnesota's got injuries. They're banged up. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, Will Fries was a guy the Seahawks were this close to getting in free agency. And as I posted yesterday, you could call it the worst dad joke in the history of mankind. But look, Leonard Williams put some ketchup on those fries yesterday with the move that he put on him on that opening drive to get to the quarterback, to get to Brosmer for the sack. And he was just utterly dominant this entire game. Minnesota's offensive line had no answers for these guys. So another great performance from that D line across the board, from starters down to the backups. Everybody contributed with big plays to this shutout of the Vikings. And the last but not least selection, Drake Thomas at this point, I know that it has really been a feel-good story, seeing an former undrafted player, year 3, that's generally been a special teams guy and viewed as a backup. To see him come in and not just play average ball as a starter, he has been much better than that. This kid every single week is coming up with highlight-worthy plays. And the one that jumped out to me yesterday when watching this game, it was a blitz on a run play. And being a smaller linebacker, he kind of used it to his advantage. He knows how to get lean, getting through creases to go get ball carriers. And he's so explosive, and he's so quick, and he's so decisive. You package all those things together with the technical stuff that's gotten better for him, working off blocks and being able to evade blocks. He just shot into the backfield and blew up Jordan Mason for a 5-yard loss. And he's now got 11 tackles for loss this year. I mean, Drake Thomas is an inside off-ball linebacker, has 11 tackles for loss. He's got a bunch of pass breakups. He's been really good in coverage. He had a partial sack in this game as well. He gets pressure on the quarterback consistently when Mike McDonald sends him. Ernest Jones was the best linebacker on the field for Seattle, but I don't think Drake Thomas was far behind him yesterday. He didn't have the picks, but he came through with a bunch of big plays of his own, and it continues to evolve, like I said, from being a feel-good story to this guy's a legitimate, like, top 20 caliber NFL linebacker the way that he is playing right now, and the impact plays he's making in all phases for the Seahawks. An incredible coaching job by Mike McDonald and staff to get that out of this kid. On the flip side, I know in a 26-0 shutout win, the thought process is probably, well, this is probably one of those games where it's going to be difficult to find things to nitpick on. That is not the case at all. And I'm going to start off with, to me, the biggest concern coming out of this game. Seattle's O-line has been much improved all season, but I'm not pinning this all on the players necessarily. I didn't feel like Seattle's offensive approach, I didn't feel like the coaches necessarily adapted the way they needed to early when the Vikings were getting home with their exotic sim pressures. A lot of the pressure they were getting with 4-man rush, where they had 6 or 7 guys up at the line of scrimmage. You didn't know who was coming, and they were doing a good job mixing and matching, but it just seemed like the communication was off. There were a couple times where you had an offensive lineman that wasn't blocking anybody. I know everybody's going to point at Anthony Bradford on that, but there were other players that were involved as well. It just seemed like the pass pro communication wasn't there. These guys weren't necessarily prepared for what the Vikings were going to throw at them. When Brian Flores, he throws the kitchen sink at teams. Like, he is going to bring all kinds of different looks in terms of how he's going to ratchet up pressure. And they still blitz 60% of the time yesterday. So it's not like they took their foot off the pedal in that regard, even with some of those 4-man rushes getting home. The offensive line and just the approach to try to help those guys, I just felt like it was very underwhelming yesterday. So to me, that is a big negative coming out of this game. And then I don't want to pick on Reek Woolen, because I thought Reek Woolen had a really good game. He had his first interception of the season, but this is now the second time this year that Seattle has picked off a pass and did not turn the ball over to their offense. because they fumbled it themselves. Kobe Bryant did it in Arizona earlier this year. Now Reek Woolen has it happen to him in this game where he had a really nice return, which you want a guy with his athleticism doing that, but he got blasted, helmet on the football, comes out, the Vikings recover. Didn't score any points, so it's not that big of a deal. But, man, you get your hands on an interception, you better hold on to that football. They need to work on some ball security stuff with the DBs here for Seattle. Maybe that's the next thing at Leslie Frazier boot camp, as Mike McDonald likes to call it. But they got to do something there. That's when you get an interception, you should be getting the ball to your offense, or you did an Ernest Jones where you just return it all the way back to the end zone. But either way, they've got to find a way to avoid that happening. And last, and I'm not going to say, maybe I'll say last but not least on this one, I still have some issues with the way the Seahawks handled their time management at the end of the first half. As I mentioned earlier, Demarcus Lawrence getting a sack at the 2-minute warning mark, gets a sack first play after that break, and it was 3rd down on that play. It's 4th down, and the Seahawks had all 3 timeouts. I was sitting there like, why are they not burning one of their timeouts? They let the clock go under a minute. It was at 58 seconds when the offense got the ball back. Now, they still had all 3 timeouts. The issue is then they let more than 20 seconds come off the clock in a 3-play sequence before they finally used a timeout. And then he ended up having a couple incomplete passes. I just felt like it was a very disheveled, it was a very sloppy 2-minute approach. And Mike McDonald ended up going into the locker room with 2 timeouts that he didn't use. So I felt like it was a bizarre use of time. There was a lot of conservative approaches in the second half. And I think in a game like this, it's low scoring where you know your defense is dominating. You don't feel like you need to have your offense be hyper aggressive. This is a game where you don't have to unleash everything, and I get that. But that end of the half, when you have the football after halftime as well, I feel like you got to go squash the bug a little bit. And I just thought it was a really odd usage, or lack thereof of usage, of the timeouts there with the way the Seahawks handled that. It felt like they had a chance to maybe be more aggressive and go maybe get a touchdown before the break. And unfortunately, that was limited to a field goal, but still 13-0 at that point. They felt like they were in command, that the game was theirs for the taking. And so they didn't want to have something bite them where they had a turnover or something, or Sam Darnold got strip sacked again because of the way the pass rush was. I get those things, but it still seemed like it was a very conservative approach, in my opinion. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We will have a second Monday show coming your way later today, 5:15 p.m. Pacific time. Rob Rang and I are going to be dishing out our Monday musings and going to be answering your mailbag questions. So make sure to submit those to us on our X accounts as well. Enjoy the next few hours and the rest of your Monday. Go Hawks.